All right, let's talk about California real estate. For as long as most of us can remember, the story has been all about impossible prices, right? But what if that's starting to change? Even just a little bit? Some new numbers are out, and they're hinting at a surprising crack in that giant wall of unaffordability. So let's dig in and see what's really going on. So, did buying a home in California actually just get easier? I mean, that's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? The one on everyone's mind. Well, some brand new data just dropped for the end of 2025, and honestly, it's a piece of the puzzle we didn't quite see coming. 15%. Just let that number sit there for a second. 15%. Now, I know on its own, it might not sound like a huge deal, but when we're talking about the California housing crisis, believe me, that one little number represents a pretty noteworthy shift. So what is this 15%? It means that only 15% of households in California could actually afford to buy a median-priced home. Yeah, still a pretty small slice of the pie. But, and this is the key, for the first time in a while, that number is actually ticking upward. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're calling it a slight improvement. Let's be clear, we're not talking about a full-blown market revolution here, not by a long shot. But, after years of that affordability door just being slammed in everyone's face, even seeing it crack open a tiny bit, well, that feels pretty significant.
And look, the California Association of Realtors said it best. They basically said, hey, hold on, don't get carried away, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. And it makes sense, right? It's a bit of good news after affordability got scarily close to an all-time low.
All right, let's dive into the key numbers. How big of a deal is this 1% jump really? Well, to get that, you've got to see where we've been. The trend over the last year or so really puts it all into perspective. Okay, check this out. For the last part of 2024 and through most of 2025, the index was just stuck, flatlined at 14%. So that little bump up to 15% in the last quarter, I know it doesn't look like much, but it's the first time that needle has moved in the right direction in a long, long time. So you're probably wondering, okay, why? What actually happened to make things even a little bit better? And it really comes down to two big economic factors working together at just the right time. And here they are. It's actually pretty straightforward. First, home prices actually dipped a little, not a crash, just a modest decline. And second, mortgage rates. You know how they were through the roof? Well, they came down just a bit from those crazy peaks. It's that classic 1-2 punch, right? Slightly lower prices and slightly lower borrowing costs. That's what gives buyers a little more power. But here's the thing about California. It's massive. And you can't talk about California housing like it's all one market. What's happening in Los Angeles is a totally different universe from what's happening in Bakersfield. To really get it, you have to look at California's two very different markets, the coast versus, well, everything inland. So if you look at the more affordable inland areas, that 1% improvement, that could be a game changer. That might be the tiny difference that gets a family into their first house. But then you look at the high-cost coastal markets. Think the Bay Area or Orange County. And even with this slight improvement, prices are just so extreme that it barely makes a dent. It's still a market that locks out almost everyone but the highest earners. And this is where we have to get real for a minute. While it's great to see a positive number, it's crucial to understand what this is and what it isn't. This is a glimmer of hope. It is not a solution. California's housing crisis is a deep, long-term problem, and this doesn't fix it. I mean, let's talk about the actual financial barrier that's still there. To even qualify for that median-priced home, you still need to be making an income of well over 6 figures. That one fact tells you everything you need to know about how long this road ahead really is. Because all the big, persistent challenges are still there. You've got this chronic lack of housing supply, which keeps prices way up compared to what people actually earn. And even though mortgage rates have eased, they're still really high by historical standards. So for most people, especially if you're trying to buy your first place, these significant constraints make it an enormous uphill battle. So where does that leave us? Well, it all comes down to this one big question. Is this improvement the beginning of a real sustained trend, or is it just a temporary blip on the radar, a brief moment of relief before the old pressures come roaring back? Honestly, we don't know yet. But for millions of Californians, the answer to that question is, well, it's everything.